My name's Jacob Hashimoto, and I'm sitting in front of an artwork called Armada, and it was originally built in, well, it was built in 1997. It was originally exhibited in Chicago in 1998, in a slightly different configuration. Originally, the sails were, originally the piece was comprised of 800 little sailboats. This installation is 700 sailboats, and the masts have been remade since the original piece. I built the original piece when I was living in Los Angeles, California, and I built the mast out of wood. And I didn't, at the time, I didn't really have a studio, so I had a garage space where I would cut the boats out of plywood or out of 2x4s that I kind of salvaged from this crating shop that I used to work at. And I would take all this old wood home and I'd cut it up on my saw, and then I'd go up to my bedroom and glue these little wooden masts together. And as you can see, the piece is moving, and so when we first turned it on for the exhibition, all the boats started shattering and breaking off the bottom of it, and we had to glue everything back together, slow everything down, and barely, I remember the night before the show, we were working till about 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get the piece put together. And the problem was, and I would have known that this was going to be a problem, but my studio was so small that I could only put up about 4 of the bars at a time, and then everything else was taken up with all the rest of the pieces for the sculpture. So before I went to Chicago to install it, I'd never seen the piece installed, and I didn't know if it would work. It was just this kind of idea. And I mean, I was like 25 or something like that. I arrived and I said to the installers, we had to hang it in the ceiling, and I didn't know how to do it. It just became this. It's something that I would never do again. After years and years of working and doing exhibitions, the number of things that could have gone wrong with that piece were just astonishing. But I'm glad that I did it. And the piece is here at the Bologna Art Fair because Hélène de Franchi's my dealer, Studio La Città. She came to the exhibition in 1998 in Chicago and saw this piece with Claudia Gianferrari, a dealer for Milan. And this is before we really worked together, so I just met her and we came and we saw this piece. And this past year, we were talking about what we were going to do for our 6th solo exhibition together. And she said, do you remember that piece that you did in Chicago? What happened to all the boats? And I said, I was like, well, I think they're in my parents' basement. And I grew up in a town called Walla Walla, Washington, which is rural Washington State on the west coast of the United States. And after I moved from Los Angeles, I had all these boxes of boats, and I just left them at my parents' house. And so we had to call my father and send him boxes to box all these pieces up, and we had UPS pick them up and ship them to New York, where we created them and kind of resurrected the piece. And the whole upper structure of the piece, which involves what are essentially torsion pendulums, originally that was designed with a friend of mine, Peter Biebring, in Los Angeles. And at the time I was making really heroic scale landscape pieces, so I built a sculpture of the sky a year before. And this year I was working on this sculpture of water. I had this kind of idea of building this whole kind of world out of artwork. And I was talking to my friend Peter, who was getting his PhD in physics at the time from Caltech, and I explained to him what I wanted to do. And he said that he had this little machine that made waves in the physics lab. And so we went and looked at it, and it was essentially a series of torsion pendulums that were connected at a point. And you could tap one end, and they were basically fingers that were right together. You could tap one point and it made a rolling wave. And you just hit it, and the wave would shoot down and oscillate back and forth. And basing the sculpture on that idea, I felt like we could marry those two and create complete waves out of the piece. And this piece isn't running exactly how it should, because the waves should meet in the center every time. So with those pieces, we actually, because I'd made them so badly the first time that I made them in 1998, that I didn't want to use those pieces again. So this time, we refabricated them for this exhibition, and they're better. They run smoother.